Imagine stepping into a world where your drive, your focus, your energy isn't occasional, it's unstoppable. Where the fire inside you pushes you forward when everyone else is waiting for motivation. Where challenges don't stop you, they sharpen you. Today, we're unlocking the obsession that fuels the world's most successful people, the secret force that turns ordinary ambition into extraordinary achievement. This isn't about luck. This isn't about talent. This is about tapping into a relentless hunger, a purpose so powerful that it moves mountains, breaks barriers, and transforms your life. Are you ready to ignite it inside you? When I talk about obsession, I'm not talking about something wild or unhealthy. I'm talking about the kind of inner fire that the most successful people on earth carry with them every single day, an energy that feels almost impossible to shut off. And it doesn't come from luck or some magical personality trait. It comes from clarity. Clarity so sharp, so precise that it cuts through noise, fear, and doubt like a blade. When a person becomes absolutely clear on what they want and why they must have it, something shifts inside them. They stop negotiating with their potential. They stop entertaining alternatives. They stop asking, should I? And start acting as if their mission is already written into the fabric of who they are. Think about it. Every time you felt stuck in your life, every time you hesitated, every time you found yourself drifting instead of driving, it wasn't because you lacked potential. It wasn't because you lacked strength. It was because you lacked clarity. And clarity is not about knowing everything. It's about knowing the thing that matters above everything. When successful people talk about obsession, they're really talking about this exact moment, the moment where desire becomes direction, the moment where the mind stops wandering and the heart locks in. They don't wait for permission. They don't need external motivation. They're fueled from the inside by a vision that's so compelling it feels like oxygen. They don't chase the goal. They become the person who achieves it. But here's the part most people misunderstand. Clarity doesn't fall from the sky. It's created. It's shaped by hunger, by frustration, by dreams you refuse to bury. Obsession comes from asking yourself the deeper questions most people are too distracted to ask. What do I want more than comfort? What do I want badly enough that I'm willing to look foolish in the beginning? What outcome would change my life forever? These questions strip away the fake priorities and reveal the one thing that truly matters. And once you find that one thing, you can never go back to being casual about your life. You start moving differently. You start thinking differently. You start eliminating anything that dilutes your power. When someone is truly obsessed with a goal, they don't overthink. They don't get paralyzed by doubts. They've already made the decision at the identity level. They see themselves as the person who will get it done, no matter how long it takes. And the human brain responds to this kind of certainty in extraordinary ways. It stops searching for escape routes and starts building strategies. It stops worrying about obstacles and starts training itself to break through them. You tap into a deeper intelligence, a deeper strength, a deeper level of creativity, simply because you're all in. Half intention creates resistance. Full intention creates momentum. Clarity creates that full intention. It tightens your emotional focus and sharpens your mental edge. Suddenly, distractions feel uncomfortable. Wasting time feels painful. Settling feels impossible. You're no longer pulled in a dozen directions because your mind has chosen its target. And when your mind chooses its target, your emotions follow. Your habits follow. Your discipline becomes automatic. It's not a fight, it's a flow. People look at obsessed individuals and think they have extraordinary willpower. They don't. What they have is extraordinary clarity, and with clarity comes ease. Not ease in the journey, but ease in commitment. You know this feeling. There's been a moment in your life, a dream, a goal, a desire, where for a split second you were crystal clear, and in that moment you felt unstoppable. The challenge is that most people let that moment fade. They let the world pull them back into noise. They let opinions drown out their truth. They let comfort steal their fire. The successful don't let that happen. They protect their clarity like it's sacred, because it is. They center their lives around the vision they've chosen, and that's where obsession comes from. It's the natural result of prioritizing one mission above all the noise. You see, obsession isn't intensity. Intensity comes and goes. Obsession is direction. Obsession is consistency. Obsession is waking up with purpose, even on the days you don't feel like it. Obsession is choosing the long game when the world is addicted to shortcuts. It's choosing standards that make average people uncomfortable. It's choosing progress over perfection. And most importantly, it's choosing your vision over your excuses. That's what clarity does. It eliminates negotiation. Once you're clear, the decision is made. Every action afterward is just the execution of that decision. And here's the truth. You can't create world-class results with casual commitment. You can't build a life that excites you with vague intentions. You can't rise to your highest level if your purpose is blurry. People who transform their lives don't do it by dabbling. They do it by locking into a vision so deeply that the world can't shake them out of it. They don't get obsessed because they're confident. They become confident because they allow themselves to get obsessed. They immerse themselves in the target until it becomes part of their identity. And the moment it becomes identity, it becomes destiny. This is the obsession that drives the world's most successful people. And it begins with clarity, the kind of clarity that forces you to rise, the kind of clarity that makes excuses look ridiculous, the kind of clarity that makes taking action feel natural. When you reach that level, you're no longer pushing yourself. You're being pulled by something bigger, something deeper, something true. And that's when your life changes forever, because obsession isn't about being extreme. It's about being aligned. And the moment you become aligned with your true purpose, nothing in this world can stop you. That's the power of clarity on fire. When you look at the people who rise to extraordinary levels of success, the ones who change their industries, redefine what's possible, and inspire millions, you'll notice something powerful. They don't run from pain. They don't try to avoid discomfort. They don't numb it, bury it, or pretend it's not there. They use it, they channel it, they turn into rocket fuel. Most people spend their lives trying to escape discomfort, but the ones who lead, the ones who create, the ones who break through, they let pain sharpen them. They let it carve them into someone stronger, someone clearer, someone unstoppable. Pain has energy. It carries weight, intensity, emotion, and that energy can crush you or catapult you depending on what you do with it. Every person has experienced disappointment, heartbreak, failure, rejection, and moments that felt unfair or unbearable. But the difference isn't the pain itself. The difference is how you interpret it. When you see pain as a signal that you're not enough, you shrink. When you see pain as proof that life is against you, you freeze. But when you see pain as information, raw, honest information, it becomes the most powerful motivator you will ever have access to. There's a moment in every successful person's journey where pain became the pivot. Maybe it was a humiliation they'll never forget. Maybe it was the moment someone told them they weren't capable. Maybe it was the struggle of growing up with less than they needed. Maybe it was the feeling of being overlooked, underestimated, pushed aside. Whatever it was, that moment became a breaking point, but not the kind most people think. It didn't break their spirit. It broke their limitations. It shattered the idea that staying the same was ever going to be acceptable. And once that belief breaks, there is no going back. But here's the truth most people don't realize. Pain only becomes fuel when you decide that your story isn't going to end in the place where you got hurt. That decision changes everything. Suddenly, every setback becomes a message. Rise. Every doubt becomes a reminder you're not done. Every moment of discomfort becomes a spark that lights a deeper fire. You start moving with urgency, not fear. You start acting with intention, not hesitation. You start living from a place of power instead of protection. And that shift is what creates obsession. Because obsession is never born out of comfort. It's born out of contrast. It comes from remembering what you never want to feel again. It comes from looking at the version of yourself that was struggling and saying, never again. It comes from the pain of staying small, outweighing the fear of breaking through. Pain becomes the trigger that activates your hunger. It becomes the voice inside you that says, there is more for you. Keep going. You might think the people who achieve extraordinary things are fearless. They're not. They've just found something worth suffering for. They found something worth failing for. They found something worth grinding for. And the moment you find that something, your pain becomes aligned with your purpose instead of your fears. You're no longer trying to avoid discomfort. You're choosing it. You're using it. You're turning it into momentum. Think about how your life changes when you make that decision. Suddenly, the pain of rejection becomes motivation to master your craft. The pain of being overlooked becomes the fuel to become undeniable. The pain of your past becomes a reminder that your future is too important to waste. You start leaning into challenges instead of backing away from them. You start taking action instead of waiting for the perfect moment. You start trusting that every struggle is shaping you into someone who can carry the weight of your vision. And this is where breakthrough happens. Not when everything is perfect, not when you feel ready, not when the world cheers for you. Breakthrough happens the moment you stop seeing pain as a punishment and start seeing it as preparation. When you stop saying, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this building in? Me? That question changes your entire relationship with adversity. It transforms frustration into fuel, doubt into drive, obstacles into opportunities. Every great achievement has a foundation of discomfort beneath it. People see the success, but not the sleepless nights, the private battles, the internal wars. They see the results, but not the resilience that created them. But that resilience didn't come from everything going right. It came from everything going wrong and the decision to rise anyway. It came from turning breakdowns into breakthroughs. It came from choosing growth when giving up would have been easier. And this is where your power begins, right where it hurts, right where it feels heavy, right where the world feels unfair, because that's the exact place where your strength is waiting to be activated. Pain invites you to rise into a stronger version of yourself. It demands that you evolve. It forces you to grow. And if you allow it, it becomes the fire that drives your obsession. When you use pain as fuel, you don't just build success, you build depth. You build resilience. You build a spirit that cannot be broken. You become the person who not only survives difficult moments, but becomes more dangerous, more driven, and more disciplined because of them. And that's when you stop moving through life with hesitation and start moving with conviction. That's when you stop reacting to circumstances and start creating outcomes. That's when you stop being controlled by the past and start being pulled by your future. Pain is not the enemy. Untapped pain is. Avoided pain is. Ignored pain is. But transformed pain, that's power. That's the fuel the world's most successful people run on. That's the energy that turns ordinary lives into extraordinary legacies. Because once you let pain become purpose, nothing can stop the momentum that follows. Use what hurt why. Use what challenged you. Use what tried to break you. Turn it into the fire that pushes you past every limit. Turn your pain into rocket fuel. Focus is one of the most misunderstood forces in human performance, yet it's one of the most powerful. Everyone talks about wanting more of it, but very few people understand what it really feels like when you lock in on something with absolute certainty. The world's most successful people don't just have good focus, they have obsession-level focus. They operate as if their life depends on it, because in many ways it does. Not their physical life, but the life they're trying to build, the identity they're trying to grow into, the future they're committed to creating. That future doesn't come from scattered attention or half-hearted effort. It comes from the kind of focus that turns a simple desire into a mission. Most people struggle not because they lack talent, potential, or opportunity, but because their attention is fractured. They're pulled in a dozen directions. They're constantly switching, constantly reacting, constantly chasing whatever distraction feels urgent in the moment. And the truth is, distraction isn't just about social media or noise. It's about internal conflict. It's about wanting two different things at the same time. It's about saying you want greatness, but choosing convenience. Saying you want change, but choosing comfort. Saying you want progress, but choosing procrastination. That inner conflict is what drains your power. When you study the people who win at the highest levels, you see a different pattern. They collapse their focus onto one outcome, one target, one mission. They eliminate the emotional noise. They cut away the unnecessary commitments. They choose what matters most and give it everything. They live by a simple principle. If it doesn't move the mission forward, it doesn't get there in. Urgy. That level of focus isn't restrictive. It's liberating. It frees you from the constant mental clutter that keeps most people stuck in loops of hesitation and half effort. Think about how your energy changes when you decide that one goal matters more than anything else. Suddenly, you're not negotiating with yourself every morning. You're not deciding over and over whether you feel like taking action. The decision has already been made. Your mind knows where it's going and your behavior aligns automatically. That's the power of clarified focus. It reduces friction. It eliminates doubt. It creates momentum. And momentum is the closest thing to magic you will ever experience in your personal growth. Obsessed focus doesn't mean you stop caring about the rest of your life. It means you bring a higher quality of presence to everything you do. When you're truly focused, your relationships improve because you're not mentally scattered. Your performance improves because you're not split between competing priorities. Your decisions become sharper. Your emotions become steadier. You start driving your life instead of being dragged by it. You enter a flow state more often where effort feels natural and progress feels effortless. But here's the part most people miss. Focus is not something you wait for. It's something you create. You create it by choosing your mission. You create it by eliminating distractions, not by hoping they disappear on their own. You create it by setting boundaries that protect your energy and your vision. You create it by deciding that your purpose matters too much to let the world pull you off track. Every extraordinary person has a story about the moment they decided to focus. It was usually a moment of frustration or awakening when they said, I'm done living scattered. I'm done living reactive. I'm done letting my potential leak away. That decision is what positions you for breakthroughs. Once you focus, the world starts to open doors that didn't even exist before. Opportunities that were invisible suddenly show up. People who can help you appear at the right time, resources align. It's not luck. It's the natural result of concentrated energy. Your brain is designed to amplify whatever you focus on. If you focus on problems, you'll feel stuck. If you focus on growth, you'll feel momentum. If you focus on fear, you'll hesitate. If you focus on purpose, you'll act. Focus determines your emotional experience as much as your results. And when you choose your focus consciously, you stop being controlled by your circumstances. You become the architect of your internal world. There's something else that happens when you commit to intense focus. Distractions start to feel foreign. They don't entice you the way they used to. You begin to feel the difference between activities that feed your purpose and activities that drain it. You start recognizing when you're out of alignment. You feel it in your body, in your energy, in your pace. And because you feel it, you correct it faster. This is what creates consistency. Not discipline alone, awareness. Awareness built through focus. And the irony is, once you're focused, you actually gain more time. Not because the days get longer, but because you stop wasting hours on things that don't matter. You stop rewriting your goals every week. You stop starting and stopping. You stop spiraling into anxiety or self-doubt. You streamline everything, your mindset, your schedule, your effort. You concentrate your power. When your power is concentrated, even small actions produce huge results. That's why obsessed people seem superhuman. They're not doing more. They're doing what matters most with absolute presence. Obsessed focus becomes your competitive advantage. Not because it's louder or more dramatic, but because it's consistent, it's steady, it's unwavering. While others are distracted by noise, you're building momentum. While others are waiting for motivation, you're already moving. While others are wondering what to do next, you already know. Focus gives you clarity. Clarity gives you confidence. Confidence gives you speed. Speed gives you advantage. That's how people rise faster than anyone expected. But none of this happens until you make one internal shift. You stop living like you have endless time. You stop acting like you can pursue everything. You stop pretending that focus is optional. You recognize that every day you scatter your attention, you dilute your potential. Every day you lock in, you accelerate your future. And that future is built not on 100 small priorities, but on one powerful mission that deserves your obsession. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to have everything figured out. You just need to choose what matters most and give it the kind of focus that transforms ordinary efforts into extraordinary outcomes. Focus like your life depends on it, because the life you want does. There's a moment in every person's life when they realize that motivation alone will never take them where they want to go. Motivation is a spark. It feels good. It's exciting. It lights you up for a moment, but sparks fade. Sparks disappear the second life gets heavy, the moment things get inconvenient, or the moment your emotions shift. The people who break through, the ones who rise above average, aren't relying on sparks. They build rituals. They build systems. They build habits that anchor their identity so deeply that success becomes the natural outcome of how they live, not something they chase once in a while. When you talk to someone who's performing at the highest level, you'll notice something almost immediately. There's a rhythm to how they live, a structure, a pattern. They don't wait for the world to give them energy. They generate it. They don't wait to feel confident. They act in ways that create confidence. They don't wait for the perfect moment. They build rituals that force progress even on the days when their emotions are fighting them. The rituals are the reason they remain consistent while others remain stuck. And this is the real secret. Your rituals shape your identity. Your identity shapes your choices. Your choices shape your destiny. If your rituals are weak, your identity becomes shaky. If your rituals are chaotic, your life becomes chaotic. But when your rituals are strong, disciplined, and aligned with your vision, your identity becomes unshakable. You start waking up with purpose, not pressure. You start expecting progress, not hoping for it. You start living as the future version of yourself instead of waiting for that version to magically appear. Think about how different your life becomes when your habits are built intentionally instead of emotionally. Most people base their actions on how they feel. They wake up and decide, do I feel motivated? Do I feel inspired? Do I feel like taking action today? And if the answer is no, the day slips away. But obsessed individuals don't ask that question. They've structured their days in a way that bypasses the emotional negotiation. They've created rituals that move the mission forward, whether they feel like it or not. That's what makes them unstoppable. A ritual is more than a habit. A habit is something you do. A ritual is something that reinforces who you are. It tells your brain, your body, your emotions, this is what we do. This is who we are now. When you repeat a ritual long enough, it becomes your standard. And once your standards rise, your life rises with them. Successful people don't rise to the L of their goals. They rise to the level of their standards. And those standards are built and maintained through rituals. When you look at the world's highest performers, they all have rituals that strengthen their mind, rituals that strengthen their body, and rituals that strengthen their spirit. They prepare themselves before the world touches them. They prime their emotions, their breathing, their energy. They write, they visualize, they move, they reflect. They create rituals that make them powerful before they step into their day. That's why they walk with certainty. That's why they execute with confidence. That's why they stay aligned when everyone else gets knocked off course. The ritual becomes the commitment. It's the anchor. It's the thing that holds you steady when life is chaotic. Because life will test you. You will face setbacks, distractions, disappointments, challenges. But rituals create a foundation that doesn't shake. Rituals protect you from your weaker moments. Rituals remind you of who you are when doubt tries to make you forget. They turn discipline into muscle memory. And here's the beauty of it. Once a ritual becomes part of your identity, it stops feeling like work. It feels like breathing. You don't force it, it pulls you. You don't think about whether you should do it. You just do it because it's who you are now. That's the level of alignment the world's most successful people operate from. Their rituals aren't chores. Their rituals are commitments to their future self. Most people underestimate the power of structure. They think freedom means doing whatever they want, but real freedom comes from being able to rely on yourself. It comes from knowing that no matter what happens, you will follow through. Rituals give you that freedom. They eliminate the mental battles that drain your energy. They remove decision fatigue. They give you consistency without requiring willpower every day. And consistency is what builds confidence. When you follow your rituals day after day, you accumulate small wins. You generate evidence that you are becoming who you said you'd become. Each repetition strengthens your self-belief. Each completion rewires your identity. You start to look in the mirror and see someone rising, someone capable, someone committed. That internal shift is what creates the external breakthroughs people call sudden success. But nothing about it is sudden. It's earned. It's built. It's engineered through ritual. You may not control every event in your life, but you control your rituals. You control how you start your morning. You control how you speak to yourself. You control how you treat your body, how you train your mind, how you protect your energy. You control the rituals that keep your purpose alive, and those rituals will carry you farther than any burst of motivation ever could. The truth is, obsession without structure burns out. But obsession with rituals becomes unstoppable. It becomes a force. It becomes the engine behind your consistency, your growth, your courage. It becomes the reason your results compound year after year. It becomes the reason you rise while others plateau. If you want to transform your future, don't start with massive goals. Start with powerful rituals. Build the small actions that create the large identity. Build the daily steps that make success inevitable. Build the rituals that turn your mission into a lifestyle, not a wish. Because when your rituals shape you into the person you're meant to become, the life you desire has no choice but to follow. One of the greatest illusions people fall for is the idea that big goals require big leaps. They imagine success as this massive, dramatic transformation, one giant moment where everything finally clicks. But if you study anyone who has done something extraordinary, you'll notice they didn't move mountains in a day. They broke those mountains into small, manageable steps and chipped away relentlessly. They didn't wait for the perfect moment. They created momentum by taking action in imperfect conditions. They understood that motion is more powerful than motivation. They understood that progress is built through consistency, not intensity. People get overwhelmed not because their dreams are too big, but because they're trying to carry the entire dream at once. They look at the whole mountain instead of the next step. They stare at the top, freeze, and forget that every person who ever reached that height did it the same way, one step, then another, not with certainty, not with ease, not with a perfect plan, but with action, small, steady, persistent action. The world's most successful people are obsessed, yes, but their obsession is expressed through simple daily movement. They don't wait until they understand everything. They don't wait until they feel fully prepared. They don't wait until the fear goes away. They use action to create clarity. They use action to create readiness. They use action to shrink fear. The mountain only looks huge when you're standing still. The moment you start moving, it starts to shrink. The moment you take the first step, the impossible starts to feel possible. People often ask, how do I stay motivated? But motivation isn't what drives the obsessed. Discipline isn't even the main driver. It's momentum. Momentum is what makes action natural instead of forced. It's what turns hesitation into habit. And momentum doesn't come from huge wins. It comes from small steps you repeat with purpose. It comes from doing something today that moves you 1 inch closer to the life you want. Action creates identity. Every small step is a piece of evidence that tells your brain, I'm becoming someone who follows through. I'm becoming someone who makes progress. I'm becoming someone who rises. And when your identity shifts, your standards shift. Your decisions become easier. Your commitment becomes deeper. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop arguing with your potential. You stop giving your power away to excuses. That's what relentless action does. It rewires who you believe you are. Most people delay action because they think I need confidence first. But confidence is built through proof. Proof comes from movement, even tiny movement. When you take action, you build reference points. You gather victories, even small ones that stack on each other, and something incredible happens. Your brain begins to crave progress. You start seeking it. You start expecting it. You start demanding it from yourself. The reason obsessed people make things look easy is because they don't stall. They don't pause at the beginning. They don't dwell on how far they have to go. They simply ask, what can I do right now? Not someday, not later, not once everything is perfect, now. And because they act now, they gather momentum faster than everyone else. Momentum becomes their advantage. There's another truth people overlook. Action kills fear. Fear thrives in silence. It thrives in waiting. It thrives in overthinking. But when you move, when you take even the smallest step, fear loses its power. You interrupt the pattern. You weaken the hesitation loop. You stop feeding the doubt. Every time you act in spite of fear, you train your mind to see yourself as someone stronger than the fear. And the stronger you see yourself, the stronger you become. Breaking big goals into small steps isn't about making things easier. It's about making progress inevitable. It's about removing the emotional resistance that comes from feeling overwhelmed. It's about creating a clear path forward instead of drowning in the enormity of your vision. You can want the peak, but you climb with steps, not with dreams. The people who achieve the most aren't the ones who try to leap the highest. They're the ones who refuse to stop stepping. They keep going on the days they're tired. They keep going on the days they don't feel inspired. They keep going even when the results aren't visible yet. They understand that greatness is created in private, before it's celebrated in public. And most of that creation happens through small, unglamorous actions that no one sees. You don't need to master everything. You don't need the perfect strategy. You don't need flawless execution. You just need to keep moving. You need to break the mountain into pieces and handle one piece at a time. You need to honor your mission through action, not just intention. And the beauty of this approach is that every small win compounds, every tiny action adds up, every inch you move forward puts you 1 inch closer to who you're becoming. There will come a moment when you realize that the mountain that once terrified you is now behind you. And you conquered it through consistency, not intensity, through persistence, not perfection. This is how obsession manifests in real life. Not in grand gestures, not in dramatic declarations, but in the quiet, steady steps that build momentum until momentum carries you. The world sees the peak, the victory, the result, but the obsessed know the truth. It was the daily steps that made the impossible small, turned mountains into molehills through relentless action. There comes a point on every journey where the world seems to pause and test you, not gently, not politely. It throws challenges at you that feel designed to push you backward, slow you down, or convince you to settle for something smaller than what you originally imagined. And in that moment, most people hesitate. They doubt, they question whether they're built for what they're chasing. But the ones who unlock that deeper obsession, the ones who step into the levels of success most people call impossible, they respond differently. They've conditioned themselves to rise when everything around them feels like it's falling apart. They've decided that discomfort isn't a barrier. It's the signal that they're moving in the right direction. Think AB out what it really means to grow. Growth isn't comfortable. Growth isn't easy. Growth doesn't pat you on the back and say, don't worry, I'll keep this painless. Growth stretches you, challenges you, puts you face to face with parts of yourself you'd rather avoid. And yet that's exactly where your power is. Because if you only move when it's convenient, if you only push when the path is smooth, you'll never reach the levels of life that make people stop and say, how the hell did you do that? You get there by building a new relationship with adversity, not avoiding it, not running from it, not complaining about it, but learning to use it. And that's the difference between people who dabble and people who dominate. One group hopes life gets easier. The other group gets stronger. One group prays the storm passes. The other group learns how to dance in the rain. And you already know which side wins. Every major breakthrough in your life will come wrapped in a challenge. It might come in the form of a setback, a rejection, a loss, a delay, a betrayal, a failure, whatever shape it takes. It's a doorway. You either walk through it and become more, or you stand there staring at it, wishing it looked like something more comfortable. But the truth is, obsession doesn't grow in comfort. Obsession grows in those moments where you're pressed, stretched, and forced to choose who you really are. There's a point where your desire becomes bigger than the obstacle. Not because the obstacle gets smaller, but because you stop giving it the same level of meaning. What used to knock you down becomes a challenge you can carry. What used to intimidate you becomes something you can handle before breakfast. And this shift happens the moment you stop interpreting adversity as a sign that you're on the wrong path. It's usually the clearest sign that you're on the right one. Successful PLE experience obstacles just like everyone else. They face fear, doubt, pressure, uncertainty. The difference is in the pattern of meaning they attach to those moments. When something hard hits them, they don't say, why me? They ask, what is this shaping in me? What skill is this forcing me to build? What level is this preparing me to step into? And suddenly, the obstacle becomes fuel. Suddenly, the pain becomes data. Suddenly, the setback becomes a setup. But this mindset is built, not inherited. You create it through repetition, by refusing to retreat when things get hard. Every time you don't quit, you're training your mind. Every time you push one more step when you feel tired, you're conditioning your identity. Every time you keep your word to yourself, even when you don't feel like it, you are carving the neural pathways of a person who simply does not stop. And that's what separates obsession from interest. Interest fades, interest gets tired, interest wants comfort. Obsession gets louder when things get tough. Obsession grows hungrier. Obsession sharpens your focus, amplifies your energy, and pulls every ounce of strength and creativity out of you. It makes you resourceful. It makes you relentless. It makes you unstoppable. But obsession doesn't come alive in a soft environment. It's forged in friction, when the world squeezes you, when your plans fall apart, when people doubt you, when the path gets messy. That's when obsession wakes up. That's when the part of you that was waiting to be called forward finally steps into the room. You become someone who stops negotiating with excuses, someone who stops apologizing for wanting more, someone who stops asking for permission to step into their own power. And when you begin to view challenges this way, everything shifts. Suddenly, you're not offended by adversity. You're grateful for it. You're not running raw pressure. You're inviting it, because pressure has a way of revealing your deepest potential. Without pressure, the diamond stays cold. Without tension, the bow never launches the arrow. Without heat, nothing gets refined. You need these forces to strip away everything that's in the way of who you're capable of becoming. Obsession is that internal fire that burns even when the room is cold. It keeps you moving even when motivation disappears. Motivation is emotional. It comes and goes. Obsession is identity. It stays. And when adversity shows up, obsession whispers, good, let's go. Let's see what we're really made of. There will always be a voice that says, stop, this is too much. But there's another voice, a deeper one, the one you've been ignoring, the one that knows you're built for more. That voice says, lean in. Don't back down. This is the moment everything changes. That voice isn't loud at first. You have to choose it. You have to lean into it again and again. But once it becomes the voice you listen to, your entire life changes. You stop shrinking. You stop delaying. You stop doubting. You step into the version of you that was always waiting behind the excuses and fears. People who transform their lives are not the ones who eliminate adversity. They're the ones who stop being intimidated by it. They stop praying for lighter loads and start developing stronger backs. They become the kind of person who says, give me the challenge, give me the pressure, give me the obstacle. I'll grow through it. I'll rise because of it. And when you live like that, success doesn't become a possibility. It becomes inevitable. You were not designed to break. You were designed to rise. And the moment you embrace adversity as a catalyst instead of a curse, everything you've been chasing finally begins to chase you back, because the fire that tried to destroy you becomes the same fire that forges you. There comes a moment in every breakthrough where you realize something profound. The world doesn't reward you for what you want. It rewards you for what you expect from yourself, not what you hope for, not what you occasionally dream about, what you demand from your identity on a daily basis. And if you look closely at the people who rise to the very top, the ones whose obsession becomes the driving force of everything they touch, there's one thing they have in common. They live at a higher standard than the average person believes is reasonable. Not because they're stronger, not because they're luckier, not because they're born into better conditions, but because they refuse to negotiate with their own potential. They don't shrink their standards to match their circumstances. They raise their circumstances to match their standards. And the moment you do that, the moment you choose to live life at a level where your actions, habits, and discipline finally align with the future you say you want, everything changes. Most people think standards are just preferences. I prefer to work hard. I prefer to be focused. I prefer to grow. Preferences are weak. Preferences shift depending on mood, environment, fatigue, convenience. But standards are permanent. Standards tell your brain, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is non-negotiable. Standards turn effort into identity, and identity is the most powerful force in human behavior. If you want to transform your results, you don't start by forcing behavior. You start by elevating the identity that behavior comes from, because you will always act consistently with who you believe you are, and the people who operate at the highest levels don't just want success. They believe they are the kind of person who creates it. That belief shapes their actions, their energy, their mindset, and eventually their reality. When you raise your standards, you stop entertaining the version of you that settles. You stop tolerating the behaviors that sabotage you. You stop giving your excuses a comfortable place to live. You start showing up differently. You start speaking differently. You start carrying yourself differently. You start expecting more out of every moment, every interaction, every opportunity. The world doesn't respond to your potential. It responds to your standards. Think about where your life is right now. Every result you have, your relationships, your finances, your health, your growth, your focus, everything is a reflection of what you've decided to tolerate, not consciously, but through your patterns, because life gives you what you tolerate. If you tolerate procrastination, your goals shrink. If you tolerate distraction, your dreams get foggy. If you tolerate fear, your courage goes silent. But the moment you raise the bar and say, I don't tolerate this anymore, your mind reorganizes itself to match the new expectation. And raising your standards is not about perfection. It's about consistency. It's about refusing to collapse when things get tough. It's about refusing to let your circumstances dictate your commitment. It's about choosing to live aligned with a future that hasn't even happened yet, but you trust it so deeply that you start acting like it's already yours. People love the idea of a great future, but they rarely love the process. The process demands more of you than you want to give in the moment. It doesn't care about your comfort. It cares about your commitment. And here's the truth. If your standards are tied to comfort, you will never rise. But if your standards are tied to who you're becoming, you won't be able to stop rising. Every extraordinary achiever you admire has a pattern of living that would exhaust most people, not because they're addicted to work, but because their standards don't allow them to sleepwalk through life. They have rituals, they have disciplines, they have rhythms that reinforce their identity every single day. When they're tired, they show up. When they're discouraged, they show up. When they fail, they show up. Showing up isn't something they do, it's someone they are. There's a moment where you must decide, are you going to live by the standards that created the life you have, or the standards that will create the life you want? Because those standards are not the same. One keeps you familiar. The other forces you to evolve. And evolution is uncomfortable. Evolution stretches you. Evolution exposes every weakness you've been hiding from. But evolution is the only path to becoming the person your dreams require. Raising your standards doesn't mean doing more for the sake of doing more. It means doing what's aligned with your highest vision, even when it's inconvenient. It means cutting out the habits that drain your potential. It means surrounding yourself with people who make your excuses feel out of place. It means establishing rituals that condition your mind for greatness. It means holding yourself accountable long after the motivation fades, because anyone can be committed when things are easy. The question is, who are you when they're not? Who are you when you're tired, stressed, disappointed, or overwhelmed? Your standards reveal themselves in those moments. And the people who reach extraordinary levels aren't extraordinary because the path is smoother for them. They reach those levels because their standards don't collapse under pressure. Success isn't a mystery. It's not magic. It's not luck. It's the natural byproduct. Of a life lived at a higher standard, a standard of discipline, a standard of clarity, a standard of focus, a standard of intention, a standard of refusing to betray yourself. And when you live at that level long enough, your brain rewires itself. Your habits strengthen, your patterns solidify, your obsession grows sharper, and breakthroughs become predictable. You can tell where your future is headed by looking at the standards you're living today. Are they lifting you or limiting you? Are they pushing you forward or holding you back? Are they aligned with the life you talk about or the life you've settled for? Because the gap between where you are and where you want to be is almost always the gap between your current standards and the standards required for your next level. And if you want that next level, and you wouldn't be here if you didn't then you must raise the bar internally before life raises the bar externally. You must choose to hold yourself to a higher level long before the world rewards you for it. That's how transformation works. You don't get the reward and then adjust the standard. You raise the standard and then the reward becomes inevitable. Raise your standards and your life will rise to meet them. There comes a point in your journey where you have to understand something most people never do. Obsession doesn't stay alive on its own. It needs fuel. It needs emotional energy, psychological strength, spiritual depth. It needs habits that protect it, people who support it, a mindset that defends it, and an environment that reinforces it. You can't nurture a world-class obsession with low-energy routines, low-energy people, or low-energy thoughts. You can't expect your fire to burn if you keep surrounding it with things that put it out. The most successful people in the world know this. They don't leave their emotional state to chance. They do. They don't leave their mindset to randomness. They don't leave their energy vulnerable to whatever the day throws at them. They build systems that nourish their inner world so their outer world grows with power and purpose. They don't try to stay focused. They design a life that makes focus natural. They don't try to stay driven. They condition their minds to crave progress. That's the difference between people who are momentarily motivated and people who are truly unstoppable. Your obsession requires a foundation. Without that foundation, your focus becomes fragile. Your discipline becomes inconsistent. Your confidence becomes shaky, and your vision becomes foggy. With that foundation, everything expands. Your capacity, your courage, your creativity, your resilience. You become someone whose drive isn't affected by circumstances, opinions, pressures, or setbacks. You become internally fueled instead of externally triggered. The first part of nurturing your obsession is managing your emotional state. If you don't manage it, the world will manage it for you. And the world is noisy, fear, negativity, uncertainty, comparison, distraction. They're everywhere. If you don't develop the ability to step into a powerful state on command, you'll be pulled into the chaos around you. The people who rise above are the ones who learn to shift their state intentionally, rapidly, consistently. They don't wait to feel good. They create the state they need to move forward. They shift their breathing, their physiology, their focus, their language, because they know that emotion fuels motion. And if your emotions are weak, your actions will be weak. The second part is shifting your focus. Most people focus on what they fear, what they lack, what they can't control. And when you do that, obsession becomes impossible. You can't build anything extraordinary while living in the mindset of scarcity. You can't stay driven when you're constantly imagining the worst case scenario. You have to train your mind to focus on what empowers you, your mission, your progress, your capability, your reasons. Your reasons matter more than your resources. Your reasons matter more than your doubts. Your reasons matter more than your temporary discomfort. When your reasons are compelling enough, obsession becomes the natural byproduct. But even emotional state and focus aren't enough if your internal dialogue is working against you. You can't speak defeat and live victory. You can't talk yourself into limits and expect to break through them. Words shape identity. Identity shapes action. Action shapes destiny. The most successful people speak differently. They speak with certainty. They speak with clarity. They speak with ownership. They speak in a way that reinforces the person they're becoming. And when your words align with your mission becomes inevitable, then comes your environment. Your environment will either nurture your obsession or slowly suffocate it. Most people underestimate how powerfully their surroundings influence their behavior. Your environment should remind you of your mission, not distract you from it. It should elevate your standards, not lower them. It should fuel your dreams, not drain them. Sometimes that means reorganizing your physical space. Sometimes it means changing routines. And sometimes it means letting go of people who don't align with your future. Not because you don't care, because your dream requires a version of you that can't stay trapped in old environments. And speaking of people, your relationships matter more than most people admit. You cannot grow while staying surrounded by individuals who are committed to staying the same. You cannot stay obsessed when you're surrounded by people who live casually, think casually, and treat their lives casually. The right people don't just support your dreams, they challenge you, inspire you, elevate you, and call you out when you're slipping. They don't let you lie to yourself. They don't let you play small. They don't let you shrink your vision. They're living at a level that makes you want to rise. That's the power of a high-level environment. But nurturing obsession also means nurturing your energy. Your physical energy is the engine behind your actions. If your energy is low, your execution will be low. You can't pursue a massive mission with a body that's exhausted, undernourished, overstressed, or mismanaged. You need vitality. You need strength. You need clarity of mind that comes from movement, rest, hydration, nutrition, and recovery. Your body is not separate. from your obsession. It is the vehicle for it. And when you treat your body with discipline, your mind follows. And then there's your mind. Your mental diet is just as important as your physical one. What you consume, social media, conversations, news, entertainment, thoughts, either sharpens your focus or scatters it. Mental clutter is the enemy of obsession. If your mind is full of noise, doubt, distraction, and negativity, there's no room for the depth of commitment required to create something extraordinary. You must guard your mind like it contains your destiny, because it does. Finally, nurturing obsession requires rituals, not random habits, not occasional routines, rituals, anchors that ground your identity every day, practices that remind you who you are and what you're building, a morning that sets your direction, a nighttime routine, that prepares you for excellence tomorrow, weekly resets that realign your vision. These rituals turn discipline into lifestyle, lifestyle into identity, identity into destiny. And when you combine all these elements, emotional state, focus, language, environment, relationships, energy, mental diet, rituals, your obsession becomes unshakable. You don't rely on willpower. You don't rely on motivation. You rely on a system built to support the highest version of you. And when the highest version of you becomes your default state, doors open, opportunities appear, clarity sharpens, momentum grows, and your mission becomes unstoppable. Nurture your obsession, and your obsession will transform your life.